what we find under adrenaline is your movements will get in half and they will speed up twice as much. Unfortunately, what that means is if you train to throw a palm shot 12 inches, in the street it becomes 6, which often means you're doing something like this. And that obviously won't be effective unless you're a lot bigger than the person. In here in our class, we train to bring the hand from way back here, bring that whole body, and we're covering 3 to 5 feet. That's doing a couple things for us. One, on the street, when I get cut in half, I'm now still throwing from here. Okay, so I'm even though I'm still in half because of the adrenaline, I'm still throwing a shot with a lot more body mechanics. And that's what you got to have to develop the power. You got to have those body mechanics and that the big motions that we do while slower. And sometimes we take some flack that, you'll never be able to throw that kind of a strike on the street. What happens on the street is it will speed up and our body mechanics will cut in half. And as we watch these adrenaline scenarios and we put in some trained martial artists, we see a lot of their punches, because they're only covering 1, maybe 2 feet, they're too short to have any power. And the people who do the full body mechanics, they're also suffering under the effects of adrenaline, but because they're training at 4 to 5 feet, they're still throwing it with 2 to 2.5 feet of distance. So it's still an effective shot and still has body mass behind it. And another big aspect of it, but tied right in, is every strike we do, we're always hitting through the target. So if the person's head is here, my palm is always practicing going way beyond the target. So those big motions too, we're not surface hitters. We are hitting, instead of hitting the guy on the jaw, we're hitting the guy behind the head. So you're getting much more impact on the person when we do make the contact. And when we do, I'll show you the soft shield, we'll demo that. Jacob, can you grab a tie pad and we'll demo it?
This, for instance, what you accomplish this at scenario night?
That's where we test the results. So during the month, we'll work the people on like a knee shot. And they'll work that knee nice and slow. They'll trust me that they'll be fine on scenario night. And then scenario night is our test. And that's something that I always try to do in the martial arts. If I teach something, I have a way to test it. That way the student can know it really worked. It's not just working for me, but it's working for them. Soft shield. What happens a lot of times in the martial arts is people hold a pad, a shield. They hold it really strong. And they try to be almost like a brick wall to the guy. So as he tries to hit it, 2 things happen. One, his hand gets stopped here, okay? Because I'm working in. I've even had people say, move it into the person and really give them a good workout. Well, what happens is 2 things. One, his body is taking a lot of impact here. So he hits it once and he goes, ouch. You know what? I'm going to hit it a little less harder next time because this is starting to hurt me. So that's not good. And then the other thing is I'm not teaching him to follow through. I'm teaching him to hit this surface because I don't give it. I don't give it. What happens in soft shield is as he hits, I'm moving the target. He's practicing full follow through. And his body, because I didn't offer him hard resistance, his body's not saying, I need to decrease my power level. And instead he's saying, hey, you know what? That felt pretty good. Now I'm going to really smack into it because I'm not getting injured. I'm not feeling the effects as I do. So he now starts to do that, and we see amazing power off people. We'll have people who start off, spend a lot of time, and they learn how to hold the shield proper. And the people who start and don't know better, they right away get power shots. A lot of us martial artists who have been hitting and are used to this feedback of the pad being super strong, they struggle with it because their body doesn't know how to respond without that resistance level. Once they get past that, and to be honest, the longer they train, sometimes the harder that is to do. Once they get past that, man, the power level goes up unbelievable. And you cannot hold a pad against my students like this and have them hit you. It'll tear your shoulder up, and that's because they hit just too hard, and that's just bad. But if you look at my head, as Jacob fires at me, this is what I would consider a surface hit. And if I held the pad right here, that stopped. But like I said, we train to always be hitting through. So you also want to mimic that when you hold the shield for people. As he hits, I want to mimic that action that the body is going to do. So he is practicing on follow through. And if not that I'm a board breaker, but when you break boards, if you hit the surface of a board, you can hit as hard as you want. The board don't break. You have to penetrate through. That's what gets your board to break. And if we take that same concept of penetrating through the target, that also is a great reason why that shield has to be soft. He needs to practice his penetration. And a hard shield will stop it.
So is there anything that you're missing, that the student is missing out on by not, because there's many schools that have always taught that. So is there something that they're missing out on that they have to accomplish through other training?
And I tell you, in all honesty, I don't try to force ideas on my students. I present it, and they take it when they can. Okay. So I mean, I even have the trouble with my own students. There's a few of them who, they grew up punching a tree, and they're not going to stop just because we got this wimpy shield way, and I, some of my training partners will have called out all such of names they could put next to this way of holding the shield. But when I tell them is, watch my students, hold the pads for my students, and feel their power coming in, and tell me, would you want to get hit with that? And the answer ends up being no. So they still struggle with it, but they're most of them, as they open their minds up, we're getting a lot more people converting to this method, even though it's a flaky, wimpy way to hold the pads. Once they feel it, it's just amazing, and a lot of them are converting over. But like I say, even among my students, some of my hardcore people who have been with me a lot of years, they still are convinced you got to hit something hard. I totally say it's counterproductive. I don't want Jacob training proper technique to go follow through, and then I don't want him to go home and be hitting a sand, bag on the wall that stops and be training himself to stop. Now if he wants to train himself that way, I can't stop him, but he gets no benefit by going home and doing that kind of training. So I honestly, on the hard targets, I would say to anybody, why would you do it versus why don't feel need to do it. Really say to yourself, what are you getting out of that training? And I would totally get away from it. It's much safer on the body. Plus, let's face it, I grew up, punching walls, punching trees, and your knuckles are deformed. They don't look quite right. And I hear horror stories of people who can't use their hand right who've done that kind of training. So the human body, we got to be in this for the long haul. So look at your training and make sure that you can still do it when you're 50, 60, 70 years old. And then that also puts a different perspective on it as well. This is definitely easier on the body, and the stuff that's hard on the body, we really have to say to ourselves, why are we doing it, and look at that long-term effect as well. But if you want to go hit a Makawari, go right ahead.